ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the all-inclusive Mega Man X Retrospective, and this time we're looking at Mega Man Xtreme for the Game Boy Color. I figured this would be a short video, so to spice it up, I brought along a guest. Introduce yourself, good sir.
Thanks, Jay. Hello, folks. I am Michael from the Retropolis Zone YouTube channel. I've been reviewing Mega Man X4 to X6 on my channel recently, and since Jay was in the middle of this all-inclusive retrospective, I am joining him on this first Game Boy Color installment.
I'm actually heading into new territory for this channel, since I've barely reviewed any handheld games, let alone one on the Game Boy. I mean, all the way back in my horrific Sly 1 review, I had said that my first gaming device was the Game Boy Advance, but still, I haven't Let's Played or reviewed any games on it. Before this video, I never really bothered to play this game very extensively.
Me neither, actually. I knew about Xtreme and had an intention of playing it, but I had never really come around to it. Now is a good opportunity to check it out and see what I think of the game.
So to not waste any more of your time, let's begin with the storyline. What exactly is there to talk about? Well, you shall see. As I've stated already, Mega Man Xtreme takes place after Mega Man X2 but before Mega Man X3. Not saying that means anything, but we'll get into that later. So to begin with, you start in the intro stage of X1, and at the end you face Vile, who the designers forgot to put in the correct name for and left his Japanese name in. After that, X and Zero as well as Dr. Kane discover that the computer's being hacked and the data for bosses from X1 and X2 are back again, and so X must travel inside to do something about it.
The thing about this story is that it takes itself way too seriously, and there are a bunch of new characters out of nowhere whom we are supposed to feel emotionally invested into. For those who want to avoid spoilers, skip to this point of the video. So you have MIDI, the technical support of X, and Techno, the technical support of Zane and Gemmel, two characters that brought Sigma back and have no other background whatsoever. At the end of the adventure, we find out that they are brothers and that Techno was mind-controlled by Sigma to aid in his villainous efforts. Somehow Techno snaps out of it when he sees MIDI and then makes a sacrifice for the greater good. A dramatic image is displayed of MIDI crying with Techno in his hands, and it's like, what is this shit? We don't even know who these characters are, so why is this here? You cannot even skip cutscenes, you have to mash through them, making it seem as if the developers wanted the player to care about the story.
The death scene is the most egregious example, but other than that, the game has really long cutscenes expositing information that nobody cares to know. Like how before the title screen you can watch a 3-minute long cutscene describing every ounce of backstory in the Mega Man X canon. A story in a game like this should only really serve to get the game started and not much else. So I don't know why the writers took it so seriously. Moving away from that, we can finally talk about the game design. Mega Man Xtreme starts out in the intro stage of X1, only this time we have the dash at defaults. This proves why it wasn't fun in X1 to begin with, since in this game it goes by really quickly. Although the level design is really basic still, not particularly fun to traverse through.
From there, we have ourselves 4 Mavericks to fight: Chill Penguin, Storm Eagle, and Spark Mandrill from X1, and Flame Stag from X2. Sound familiar? Well, the level design in all of these places is very similar to the console counterparts. In fact, they are virtually the same in both layouts and gimmicks. We still have to escape from a rising fire set piece by climbing walls in Flame Stag stage, deal with the surprise motherfucker birds in Spark Mandrill stage, and go through the caves in Chill Penguin stage with a Dr. Light capsule at the top. In some levels, an item or two may be switched around in terms of location, but that's about it. Storm Eagle stage, for example, switches the hard tank and sub tank around.
Some levels had to add new secrets, like a capsule and Flame Stag's level in Spark Mandrill's stage. The level design is so identical that areas that used to carry power-ups no longer do, like the sub-tank and Flame Stag's stage. Either that or the abilities have been changed to get something in the same spot, like the sub-tank and Spark Mandrill's stage. Not that these levels are poorly designed, since if you liked X1 and X2, you'll probably find something to like in this game.
Because the level designs are largely lifted from the console titles though, there are some issues on the handheld. Since the Game Boy Color has a much lower screen resolution, the amount of space the designers had to work with was reduced. This wouldn't be as much of a problem if the sprites were smaller or if the game had new level designs specifically made for the lower resolution. Instead, you'll feel crammed in some stages with foes attacking you that are hard to anticipate on. In Spark Mandrill stage, for instance, it's very easy to get hit by these enemies moving around when climbing down the ladders.
We have 4 heart tanks and 2 sub-tanks, although good luck finding energy for those because you'll be taking a lot more damage than you would in any of the other games. In terms of Dr. Light capsules, those are back again too. They all have the same function as the first armor from X1 with the brick-breaking headbutt, the 50% damage reduction, and the ability to charge special weapons and the X-Buster to a third level. Since the dash is given by default, by the way, the dash in this game is activated by pressing the start button, which I can't criticize since there were no other buttons to use, but at least like all the other games you can double tap the directional button in the direction you wish to dash to. Anyway, the foot parts grant X the ability to dash jump off walls, which you could do in the previous games by holding down the dash button and jumping at the same time, but is now activated by default. This makes playing as X a little awkward though, since his controls are made more floaty by this. That serves as a smooth segue into the bosses. The AI is the same as the console versions, but given the smaller screen, odds are you're going to be taking damage you wouldn't have taken otherwise, in addition to the foot parts leading you to take extra damage.
This is immediately noticeable on Chill Penguin. In X1, he's probably one of the easiest Mavericks to defeat, whereas in Xtreme he can kick your ass pretty badly. That's not to say the fight is necessarily poorly designed, but the time frame to avoid attacks in Chill Penguin himself is significantly smaller. Like, I'm just saying, if you had trouble beating Spark Mandrill in the SNES game, you are sure to have it worse here. The dude was already quite big before, so it's easy to imagine he feels all the bigger here. Don't get me wrong, the bosses are beatable and the dash always being there is a contributor to that. However, similarly to the stages, they could have worked around the limitations of the hardware more gracefully with smaller sprites. Xtreme also takes a few pages from X2 with the X-Hunters in Flamestack stage where you can fight Zane. He has a very predictable pattern though and is fairly simple to beat as a result. You don't get anything for beating him either, so he is even more of a pointless addition than the actual X-Hunters themselves.
After you beat normal mode, you unlock hard mode, which consists of 4 more stages: Armored Armadillo from X1, and Magna Centipede, Morph Moth, and Wheel Gator from X2. Hard mode is clearly a continuation from normal mode, since you're allowed to load your completed save file from normal mode into this and play with all the armor, the heart tanks, the sub-tanks, and weapons you got. However, by picking hard mode on the main menu, you play it as Naked X. This is pretty confusing since I figured picking this would mean you'd get all the power-ups, but I was wrong, and the game autosaves upon picking it. So you'll be stuck here getting more game overs than I'd like to count, since the bosses here aren't joking around. Either that or play normal mode again, and remember to reload your save file this time.
Yeah man, it's just a bunch of nonsense since hard mode really isn't all that challenging if you continue from your normal mode save file. Like you said, it's only difficult if you accidentally go in Vanilla X, and it's more of a continuation anyway because there are different stages, different bosses, and different upgrades from normal mode. Once again, these levels are practically the same thing as they are based on. Armored Armadillo still sees you riding minecarts or whatever and fighting the drill-esque machines, and Morph Moth still has that bug mini-boss thing twice. At least Wheel Gator stage isn't fucking shaking all the time, thankfully, and it houses an inconsequential fight against Gemmel. By the way, it's the same reward as Zane, nothing. And Magma Centipede stage has platforms to jump on in the scanning room. You also fight the mini-boss from X2 here twice, seeing how the wireframe sword couldn't be rendered on the Game Boy Color. That's kind of lame. Couldn't they have thought of another boss at the minimum?
There are 4 Dr. Light capsules here. If you go in as Naked X, then these are the first armor parts again. But if you already have that, then you're going to get the ability to call upon Zero to do special moves that clear the screen fairly quickly. Although from my experience, these really don't help on bosses at all. In stages though, the X-Buster gets the job done much better since normally there aren't that many enemies on the screen. In terms of boss design, like I said, these guys put up quite a fight. So what a coincidence that the last boss of the weakness order in normal mode just so happens to have the weapon that kills a boss from hard mode easily, and then from there there's a new weakness chain. This is the point we're trying to drive home. That these two playthroughs do not need to be separated since the stages are different, so they aren't much harder to go through than before, and since it's all one weakness chain, one playthrough would have made eons more sense. Making it one playthrough would reduce the repetition as well since you have to play through the intro stage again and the castle stages again. However, I think that serves as a smooth segue into that.
Right, because normal mode and hard mode only change which 4 Maverick stages you go through, the intro stage and the castle levels are the same thing. The only alterations are the boss rush before Sigma and the fact you fight Zane in normal mode in the first final stage, whereas on hard mode you fight Gemmel. Other than that, same stuff. This area also closely resembles Sigma Stage 1 from X1, although the platforming section at the start over the gigantic bottomless pit is much shorter and less precise.
In the second stage, you can get the Hadouken and Shoryuken in the same fashion as X2, but oh my god is it annoying, since this game you have to manipulate the moving platform from X2. I criticized it there because I was setting it up for this review. The platform is so damn finicky since sometimes I jump on it and nothing happens, and not to mention how freaking glitchy it is. Sometimes I actually had the platform go through the floor you need to get through, and most of the time wouldn't even go through the space in between the floors, and it just stopped even though the sprites aren't even close to each other. For what? Nothing. Neither superpower kills bosses in a few hits anyway. Although to be fair, I do like how to activate them you don't have any button combos to worry about. Instead you charge and either hold up or down on the D-pad, but still getting there is so obnoxious.
Oh well, at least the second castle stage itself is fine. Besides that, you don't need the platform to complete the stage in and of itself, so Jay should just stop whining about that section. By the end of the level awaits Sergei, who comes out of nowhere with no explanation, and this boss is for once not necessarily harder than the original encounter in X2. After that is the boss rush, which is mercifully not as drowned out because you only fight 4 Mavericks in a row instead of 8, and then Jedi Sigma from X1 soon follows. This encounter is, as usual, the same as from the original game, but what sucks is that if you get a game over, you have to redo the boss rush all over again. I thought X4 was annoying with placing the boss rush and final boss in the same stage, but at least it didn't reset the whole fiasco when running out of lives. Still, the boss rush is short, as I mentioned, so that evens out somewhat.
The final boss is ripped right out of X1, and it's insanely easy in this game. In X1, he could kill you in seconds, but here you can just stand on his hand or climb to the walls and spam charge shots are his weakness, and he goes down very swiftly. As Michael hinted at, getting a game over will result in having to do the whole boss rush again, as well as all this shit. After that ends, you unlock Extreme Mode, which allows you to experience all 8 stages together with no cutscenes. It might be slightly harder, I guess, but after beating one boss and getting the 50% damage reduction, and going in the weakness order, the game was just as easy as it was before. However, this mode in my opinion is what the game should have been to begin with.
You know, I agree, if that were the case and the sprites were smaller, this game would have been quite a bit better. I do think the graphics look pretty okay at least, and there is a charm to seeing the sprites from the Super Nintendo versions in a less detailed, low color count fashion for some reason. The music is also far from bad. I know you don't care for it, Jay, but it's not like much more could really have been done with the sound chip, and the tunes can sound pretty cute. Armored Armadillo and Spark Mandrill sound nice to me, and Wheelgator's instrumentation is less whiny and ear-grating. Solid jazz if you ask me.
In closing, Mega Man Xtreme is not a bad title at all. Many flaws were from the technical limitations presented by making a Game Boy Color game, but as we've already discussed before, if the game was more original and did new things, then it would have been designed around those limitations, as opposed to porting console levels into a handheld device.
Yeah, in conjunction to that, the whole normal and hard mode rubbish was just kinda funky, and Mega Man Xtreme would have been better off without that. The game also has a certain blandness to it because there is very little, if any, original content here. It's all copy-pasted material slapped into a new release on a different platform. Back in the day though, this probably would have been pretty awesome to have. Sitting in the back of the car as a kid on our way on vacation? Yeah, I can see the appeal. Nowadays, it's more of a novelty thing to check out, something interesting to experience in a historical sense, but since X1 and X2 are all on the Wii, Wii U, and new 3DS Virtual Console, there is not much of a place for it anymore in 2016.
In addition to that, X3 is also on 3DS, as well as X4 and X5 being on PSP and Vita. So like Michael said, Mega Man Xtreme is pretty much valueless. Although if you do wish to play it, it's on the 3DS eShop as well. So with that said, Michael, explain to the audience where they can find you.
Thanks again, Jay, for having me. It was fun doing this. You can find my content on the Retropolis Zone YouTube channel. I make long, in-depth, and analytical reviews on games, including the Mega Man series, so if you like Jay's content, you may just enjoy what I have on offer too.
Thanks again for joining me, Michael. And so with that said, next up on the all-inclusive Mega Man X retrospective will be Mega Man X5. However, it might just be a while, so stay tuned. With all that said and done, I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm actually heading into new territory for this channel, since I've barely reviewed any handheld games, let alone one on the Game Boy. I mean, all the Dang, I don't know if we can do it. I don't know if I can keep a straight face during this audio recording. But this video, before I... Okay, fuck. Before this video, I never actually... Okay, I'm just gonna cut it out so I don't get confused. Oh my god, my recording's never this bad. Okay. Alright. Before this video, I never actually really bothered to play this game very extensively, but I did own it. Cut out that little space there.
You fucked up my sentence, dude. I said me neither.
The AI is the same as the console versions, but given the smaller screen, odds are you're going to be taking damage you wouldn't have taken otherwise, in addition to the foot parts leading you to take extra damage.
This is immediately... God damn it, this guy is blowing his nose in the middle of my voiceover.